to Voices Against Violence, a Harmony House podcast to educate, empower, and serve as a voice for survivors. We aim to shed light on crucial issues surrounding domestic violence, offer support, and inspire action for change. Join us as we work together to create a community where all individuals can live a life free of abuse.
Welcome back to Voices Against Violence. My name is Kirstyn Walker. I'm the Assistant Executive Director at Harmony House.
I'm Charity Jordan Rex, Prevention Program Manager for Harmony House, and I am so excited to have a great community partner in the house, Kirstyn. We are both excited. I will let them introduce themselves, but one of my favorite Springfieldians is in the room. And so
I generally say one of my favorite humans.
I mean, yes, but yes. So...
And we're so glad to have both of you.
But we will let y'all's favorite human introduce herself first.
Aaron, it's only because I've known Amelia longer. I will
You're getting
bring that into the conversation. But please welcome, we've got the Glo Center here today.
Yay, yeah. Add some applause sound effect later.
Amelia, Aaron, would you mind to introduce yourself to our listeners?
I would love to. My name is Amelia Stauffer. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am a licensed master social worker in the state of Missouri, and I work as the community services specialist at the Glo Center.
And I'm Aaron Kitchens. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the executive director of the Glo Center.
So excited to have both of you here. We're coming up to June, which is Pride Month. We want to talk all about that, but also the intersection of domestic violence and the LGBTQ plus community, and just put that on everyone's radar.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of our goals always when we're having community partners on is to highlight the work that you all are doing.
Yes.
So can we start there? What's the Glo Center? Tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Glo Center in Southwest Missouri is LGBTQIA plus community center. So we have been around. This year is actually Glo's 30th anniversary. So
congratulations.
Happy anniversary.
We're really excited to have been here as a part of the Springfield community since 1996 and up on Commercial Street for a majority of that time in our space. So the Glo Center started as a passion project, a group of like-minded queer individuals, mostly some gay and lesbian folks from the community, a lot of whom worked at Missouri State and had other jobs in the community, came together and realized that there was a need for a space specifically for queer people, because at the time the only spaces that really folks could gather in were bars, and there was definitely a need for a space that was safer, healthier, and folks of all ages could gather. And so out of the work of folks like Jim House and Kathleen and Tom, George, and some other folks, some of whom are still around, we're going to have a good group of founders at Ozarks Pride Fest this year. Wow. Came together, started the Glo Center, rented that building, eventually purchased it, and now we're up on Commercial Street in a space that I'm not sure that we could necessarily afford to create today. But we've been here now for 30 years serving the LGBTQ plus community. And so we've grown a lot in the last couple of years. So we do a lot for our community. And I'm just going to give you those. So,
yeah,
I feel like I'm dominating. Yeah, I just start talking.
This is great.
Yeah.
We love the context, and then we'll ask more questions, but please give us the context.
Yes. What does Glo do? I mean, it's a place for folks to gather, but you also are doing a lot in terms of providing resources and services.
Yeah, so for its first 27 years or so, community center, that's the heart of what we do. Support groups, Glo Youth, which used to be called Galaxy, which is our after school program that now meets twice a week, really was like the bread and butter and at the heart of what the Glo Center did, as well as starting Ozarks Pride Fest to celebrate Pride every June and during Pride Month. But in the last few years, especially as there's been more opportunity to take a step back and look at what our community really needs, and with the political and social climate and political and social violence being and rhetoric being the way that it is in our community, we knew that we needed to do more. So the last few years have really been taking a step out of that space on Commercial Street and seeing how we can meet folks in the community where there are, which is how Amelia came to join the Glo team. So I'll let Amelia say what she does for the Glo Center.
So again, I'm Amelia. I was brought on about 2 years ago, September of 24, and it started out with Aaron sharing a little bit of a dream he had for expanding the services that Glo could offer and what that could look like if a social worker was to be brought into this space. And so it was really fun to be able to sort of brainstorm and dream and just say, what could this be? And so We were lucky enough to get a grant from the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. I clearly was not hired during this time. I went through a hiring process that was really interesting, and it wasn't a typical hiring process. It was the kind of process where he was like, what would you do if, you know? And I'm grateful to have had quite a bit of experience previously with building programs or, you know, creating new opportunities for people, that it was really fun just even in the interview process to like dream together, you know? And so I was lucky enough to be offered the job. And so I took it and I walked into the space on, you know, in September of 24 and was just like, okay. He was like, start building a program.
Go.
You know, and I mean, I had just graduated with my social work degree, so that's kind of an unusual thing for a social worker to walk into a space right after getting out of school and saying, okay, I'm just going to make my own program. The one thing that was very sure was that we already had a crisis cold weather shelter that had started the year before that I actually had volunteered with. So that was for sure going to continue. There were plans to maybe start a pantry. And so we went through the process of trying to figure out what does that look like? There's a lot of logistics behind that, different kind of stuff like that. And then ultimately the goal was to be able to offer direct services to people to be able to find spaces in the community where they can be safe. Because there are lots of resources in our area, but not all of them are necessarily super receptive to the LGBTQ plus community. And so the goal of this job, in addition to building those direct service lines, was also to build bridges with community organizations to find out in the community who's doing the work that supports our organization. And I had fortunately already run into you all prior to starting work at Glo through a monthly meeting that we used to have with charity. And it kind of turned into, I met some resources at that meeting, and it's been really interesting, because one of the things that people ask me all the time is like, how do you do this work for LGBTQ plus people in Southwest Missouri? And the thing that I have found is that there are lots of things that you can predict might happen if you go into certain organizations in this community. The thing of it is that I am finding a lot of exceptions. I think the coolest thing about finding the exceptions to what might be considered the rule is that there are a lot of people who openly will acknowledge, even if not on a website, that they're willing to do this work, you know? And so it gets, I get the privilege of being able to have conversations with these folks and be able to really build relationships, direct relationships. One of the things that my clients are dealing with the most is just the fear of being discriminated against. And so a lot of times that fear keeps people from going.
It's a barrier, yeah.
From making that phone call, from walking into an intake space, because they are so afraid. And so one of the coolest things about my job is that I get to say, I know Kirstyn Walker. She's the Assistant Executive Director of Harmony House. I know Charity Jordan Rex. You know, I know these people and they will treat you well. You know, and now I know Atticus too, you know? Right. And so like when I can tell somebody that I know somebody in this space, they're more willing to follow through on services.
You're creating a network of safety.
Absolutely.
Wow. And what a cool thing that you got to design and build and create. That's a really unique opportunity that, like you said, not a lot of social workers have, but just in general, not a lot of folks get to craft their job description. That is a very cool thing to be able to say, I see where the need is and I see our avenue to help like bridge that gap.
I love that you exist. I love that you're doing the work that you're all doing and expanding those services.
The community loves it too. This time last year, Amelia had done an exceptional job getting the programs up and running, established, getting policies and procedures written and in place and everything. And then we sat down and she started to worry because we had all these open appointments now for this new program. And I was like, well, we need outcomes. We need people to access this program. And I just kept telling her, I was like, well, we're almost to Pride Fest. We'll do a big push at Pride Fest and then we'll just start doing more outreach after the fact. how far out are you booking appointments right now as one case manager on our team?
2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
And that's with leaving some gaps for, folks who are literally unhoused, who have crisis needs that need to get in front of Amelia same day or within the same week. And so, we're now at a point where your program's not even 2 years old, and I'm having to take in my budget for the fiscal year that starts in July, figure out what that looks like to add some capacity to meet some of these direct service and case management needs, because these are critical needs that our community has. We can't really just say, well, that we're at capacity. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Good luck. Erin, you said something that I thought was so profound. You said we probably wouldn't be able to afford this space on Commercial Street now had it not been for the decades ago work of the founders of Glo Center. And I'm thinking how true that is for this movement in general, right? Like I'm thinking about how we wouldn't be where we were today, as far as we have to go. We wouldn't be where we are today without the incredible work of advocates along the way, which I think brings us to Pride Fest and Pride in general and the roots of Pride. Can you talk about that, about the history of that brought us to where we are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that that's exactly right. I think that all of the work that's been done across the country and the world, but here in Springfield over the last 30 plus years to get us to this point was critical, was crucial. I mean, there's some of the tangible things like with our space on Commercial Street. It was obtained before Commercial Street went through some of the redevelopment to turn it into the historic district and tourist attraction that is for Springfield now. So we have this very visible, walkable space that we may not have been able to buy before, as well as an empty lot for the potential for the possibility of expanding that footprint in that very visible spot in Springfield. And I think that's a really good example of all of the work that's been done over the last several decades that maybe at the time did not feel like it was making a huge impact, but it's those seeds that were planted, 30, 40 years ago that allow us today to, continue that fight and take the fight to protect our trans community, to really push back against the some of the rhetoric that is dominating the conversation now and utilize the resources that we do have available. We have a lot of conversations about how we've had some conversations, and I have a lot of conversations with folks about how there's not the resources for the fight today even that there necessarily was for the fight for marriage equality. And so we're also kind of reckoning with that and where our resources were directed following sort of the progress made for gay, lesbian, bisexual individuals, but what about our transgender part of our community? And so all of these things, none of it, we wouldn't have the privilege to be able to have conversations about where we're directing our resources during this moment had it not been for the work of activists who were doing this work during a much more difficult time. You go back in Springfield's history and look at the Normal Heart controversy, the play with the 10th Theater in Missouri State, and one of the organizers of that piece of art and community theater's house was burnt down and pet was killed. And community leaders whose last names are still present in our community were saying very, very terrible and violent things about our community. And that's all context that informs where we are today and is important for us to continue to remember. And that's why we spend a lot of time not just trying to solve problems and talk about issues, but also celebrate the progress that's made, celebrate our history. And that's a big part of what Pride Fest is. That's a big part of, in March, what Transgender Day of Visibility is. We have our moments to talk about the bad, and we have our moments to try to move things forward, but we also have to take time to celebrate the culture that we've created through the isolation and through the decades. And so we're excited to be able to do that in Pride Month with Ozarks Pride Fest and with Queer Artist Showcase, which is also in June.
Amazing. And I'm just thinking, Amelia, you said people ask, how do you do this work? And I'm just thinking you're going to be part of that story too. In 30 years from now, people are going to be able to look to all of the work that was being done now and before in this progress.
It is hard because as much as, I'm in that stage of life where I'm what is my lasting impact, But a lot... It's
going to be huge. Are you kidding?
Well, a lot of the work that I do is I don't want to say it's selfish, but it's stuff that I had to do on my own.
Right.
And so with supporting our community, with getting food, with getting, accurate identification documents and the hoops that you have to jump through to be able to do that, I just don't want other people to have to do it alone, and like, I was pretty inspired by the FX show Pose, where there's a lot of tragedy there for these houses in New York of folks of color, experiencing what it means to actually create your own system and to create your own support network. And I was just like, I want that support network,
So you're building it.
We are building it, like it's one of those things where I like to think of it as the network that connects, like mushrooms, where we feed each other.
Yes.
And I remember when I started the job, I already had some connections with some of the folks at like Metro Trans Umbrella Group in St. Louis. And we just started dreaming together about like, what does it look like to support one another? What does it look like to be able to not only help each other with information or people power, but also to help with money? And so it's been really, really cool over these several years that I've been doing the work specifically with the trans community to be able to create. Finally, we got to sign on to a pretty cool grant with several organizations from across the state to be able to fund this work as well, and so like I don't know. I really want the opportunity to be able to have all of my trans and non-binary siblings out there to be able to have that same kind of support that I saw in that show.
It's interesting that you called it selfish, because I think it's selfless. I think selfish would be the mindset of, I had to do it alone, you can do it alone. Whereas you're seeing an opportunity of, I want to be a partner with you in this. Really briefly, and then we'll get on to some more questions. I just wanted to share, I had the privilege of seeing Tarana Burke speak, the founder of the Me Too movement. And she said about her own experience with sexual violence, we do the work because we are the work. And so, I mean, that's what you're describing, right? As I had to do it alone and nobody else should have to.
Yeah.
When I hear you talk about all of the impact that you're making on the community, I think of the phrase that I say all the time, like representation matters. I know those of us in this room, we know why it matters, but what does this work and your presence? And it's a large and established presence in the community.
Yeah.
For those who are not part of the community and are like, what? Because I can hear them. I can hear those folks saying like, what? We need Pride Month. Why is that representation so important? And what does it mean to your community if you didn't have that representation?
Absolutely. I mean, there's the impacts. I mean, we could spend a whole episode or a whole podcast talking about, to your point, the importance of all of the ways that representation improves not only the lives of the folks being represented, but honestly, like our entire community benefits from folks having the representation, from folks having the access to the things that they need to fully be a part of that community. I think for us, there's a lot of really tangible impacts that we've kind of hit on a little bit, like what Amelia was talking about, that fear of discrimination. Well, if we have nonprofits that are out there with us in this fight, that are showing up at events, that are making resources available, that are specifically trying to reach a community that is hard to reach for some folks because it's become so isolated, especially in rural areas, especially in states like Missouri. And so, having organizations be a part of that movement and be like loudly participating in the work that we're doing means that they're doing the work to show the community that they are an affirming, accessible resource. And so that's actually, that's a really good thing, because that's work that we don't have to do. Then we don't have to sit down and have a conversation with every individual who needs domestic violence resources, because they've seen Harmony House out in the community. They've seen the victim sitter out in the community. And so they know that these are resources that are available. Exactly. And so for folks that maybe don't have crisis response needs or are not engaging with our nonprofit community as a client or as a volunteer, an employee, or whatever, that's why representation in all of these other spaces matters. It's like in schools, having affirming signage and symbols for students all that means is that the queer students in those classrooms can shelve their worry while they're in that classroom and learn. It doesn't mean that we're taking a sidebar to spend an hour talking about some topic, I don't know, whatever thing you want to invent in your head that you've probably read on the news. That's just not happening. That's not the point. The point is a silent signal to those kids that you're safe here. Now do some math problems.
Yes, I love that so much, because what I think a lot of people don't realize is that when you don't feel safe, really, then you kind of get in survival mode.
Yeah.
And you're not able to focus and do the math problems. I mean, but
this would be a really good time to pause this episode and go back to trauma-informed basics. That's what that is. Yes. If we are in crisis, we are not learning, whether it's math or anything else.
And that's been a big part of, in my job interview for this role, we talked a lot about folks being in crisis. I was like, we are asking people who are literally sitting in fight or flight or freeze mode to do this work and to give the little resources and time that they have. I was, before I took this job, I was on the board of PFLAG Springfield, Southwest Missouri, and I was board president, and we had just finished hiring our first staff member over there. And we were having a lot of conversations about the people involved doing the work had a lot of very critical needs themselves. Like oftentimes people showing up to get their hands dirty were food insecure, were housing insecure, were in between jobs, were underemployed, were underpaid, didn't have health insurance, don't know when the last time they saw a mental health care provider was, but they were there and they were showing up to be a part of their community. And it was like, we need to help these folks get out of that crisis mindset, because the rest of our community is also sitting in crisis because of the rhetoric that they're constantly subjected to on a local, state, and national level. But in what I said earlier about how there's not as many resources for this current iteration of the queer, rights movement, as there necessarily was for the marriage equality movement. That's not the case here in Southwest Missouri. We during the marriage equality movement, there was a part-time employee at Glo. We have 4 full-time and 1 part-time employee today. When I started, I was the first full-time employee. We have 4 full-time employees now. And like I kind of referenced earlier, and Amelia kind of referenced with some of the work that we're doing with other partners and collaborations, that number will increase by the end of the year. So we will have more folks who are reaching out to more communities across Southwest Missouri. And we don't just serve Springfield, we serve the rural areas too. And so we're doing a lot to try to bring all of this energy that we've talked about today, to Mansfield and Ava and Aurora and Joplin and Branson and Lebanon.
That is so beautiful and so exciting. And those of you who are listening, I don't know if you can tell this, but the vibes of passion coming off right now, like it's palpable. I do want to pivot because we do want to talk about this intersection between the LGBTQ plus community and domestic violence. And I think in a previous conversation a while back, Amelia, you had said that you are seeing more clients who are disclosing that they are experiencing some relationship violence. And what we know is that the numbers are already high for, we say all the time, 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men, but we know that that number is even higher for folks in the LGBTQ plus community. And they have some unique challenges. And I wonder if you can speak to what are some of the unique challenges to LGBTQ plus domestic violence survivors?
Absolutely. When people report to me that they have experienced some kind of domestic violence or sexual violence, it is usually after 1 or 2 appointments. There has been a level of trust that's built and an understanding that I am there to assist people. That's for folks who are already survivors. A lot of times the folks who are currently in a situation where they're experiencing domestic violence come into the center because they know it's a safe place, and it is like just an effort to say, I need help. A lot of folks are fleeing without a plan or resources to be able to access that, like housing or food or anything. I have noticed that there has been an uptick in the folks that I have served who are reporting either current domestic violence or a history of domestic violence. And what that looks like in that space with me is just that active listening that we were discussing earlier. It involves not being necessarily there to solve yet. And then to ultimately ask the person, what is it that's going to be the most helpful for you right now? Because I could name off a list of like, okay, let's get you in the food pantry. Let's get you a housing assessment. Let's get you into some kind of shelter. But sometimes it's not their primary goal.
Sure.
And so it's been interesting because I was coming to stuff with charity long before I was talking to these folks. And I'm so grateful because I've learned so much from being partners with you all to be able to assist this community. Because like I said, I've had an uptick in people coming in crisis, people fleeing domestic violence. And I think the thing that a lot of people maybe who aren't in the field or don't really understand is that not being affirming is domestic violence, you know? And so as much as like, yes, people do experience physical domestic violence, a lot of the people who are coming to me are coming from home spaces that are supposed to be safe, but they are not safe there because they are a part of this community.
Right. And so there's power and control in the mix because of their identity as part of the LGBTQ community.
Yes.
It certainly does add another vicious barrier. I know there were some trans youth that I worked with in a previous role. And in addition to kind of the challenges that go with that and trying to figure out life and what does this mean and what does it look like, they had, were hospitalized for suicide ideation, which was a result of their family refusing to acknowledge them. And so I think about youth who maybe are experiencing, let's say, teen dating violence. But if you're in a home, so you've got that. And then if you're in a home where the adults in that home are not affirming, that adds a whole other layer. So you can't be yourself. So you definitely aren't going to be disclosing that you've just experienced some form of dating or sexual violence. And so you're drowning in abuse, essentially.
Because the isolation tactic that so many abusive partners enact to get to, that's built in when there's not an affirming home, because then I'm isolated to seek help from the people that are meant to support me.
Yeah. There are a lot of people who have experiences exactly like what you're talking about prior to them having the confidence or the safety to be able to, live authentically and be out, if they, to your point, if they're in that home and they have they try to break up with a partner,
right,
that partner can blackmail them. To your point, it's baked right into, we've created this situation that's made people far more vulnerable, simply out of because we want them to feel shame for who they are. Right. And there are, countless examples, both that I won't share an example of something that I've seen at this job, but, other stories that I've heard, especially when you get into smaller communities, rural areas, what about those parents that don't want the community to know that their child is transgender? So are they allowed to leave the home? What about when they turn 18? Are they allowed to leave the home and go get a job?
Are they allowed to even access resources for help?
Yeah.
And all of those things, I think, just oftentimes get missed in the conversation because it feels like a more complex. It's really not that complicated of a situation. If we didn't create a situation where folks in an entire population felt isolated and felt like they could reach out for help, then we'd see numbers that are much similar to the general population on this issue. But
one of the things that we often say and that we hear survivors say a lot is that one of the things that is so helpful to them is just when they come forward, believing them. And I feel like that applies to LGBTQ folks as well. Believing their experience. I feel like you don't even have to agree with them, but you can still show compassion. You can still allow them to be who they are. Our mission is that we believe at Harmony House, we believe everyone has a right to a life free of abuse.
Right.
Regardless of what that relationship looks like.
And so that means everyone. I I wonder if because you touched on this briefly, going to different agencies and, you, Amelia, you've developed this wonderful network of community partners. I wonder though, if you've got tips for organizations, service providers that are out there. They're like, okay, you don't have to be the expert maybe in LGBTQ plus issues, but here are like 2 or 3 things that you can do to be affirming when you get that person, that client in front of you.
The first one that I would say is, and this applies to everybody that you serve, if someone tells you that their name is X, Y, or Z, just call them that.
Really that easy? It truly is.
Really hard.
Yeah.
Like I just, I feel like some folks feel like they have a point to prove by not using the name that someone asks them to use. But really, in general, if someone says that my name is Sarah, but but my legal name is this, just call them the name they want to be called.
Yeah.
If someone had a nickname, you do that. I'm not comparing the two.
No.
But I'm just saying that if someone tells you that this is the name that I'm called, just call them that. So that's tip number 1.
And that's true.
No skin off of your teeth.
No.
It's also true for like non-trans
No,
folks.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
My last name is not the same as my legal last name. Nobody has
mine.
had any qualms about it. Like no one has ever hesitated. So it really is that easy.
People go out of their way to correct when they say my old last name. They go out of their way to correct themselves and act like they've offended me. And I'm like, it's just my last name. It's not.
I literally did it the other day.
Yeah.
But okay, so just honoring somebody's name. Got it.
Yeah, I mean
Next.
that is like literally the easiest thing that you can do.
The literal least.
Yeah. To get a little deeper, the thing of it is, and this is for all the providers out there, is that like client-centered care is everything. Mm-hmm. I am trans and I don't agree with everything that my clients bring in the door a lot of the time. Like, I'm not going to lie. But it's not about me.
Right.
It's about making sure that this person has the resources and the necessities available to be able to live.
And trust them to be the experts in their own life to tell you what's important.
Yes. The minute that I start putting my values on the person that's sitting across from me is the minute that they are going to get subpar service. And so like, I don't know. I'm a millennial, and a lot of my life was spent alone in isolation. And the thing of it is that even if you don't agree with someone's existence or whatever, like, they are still a part of your community. They are still a human being who has walked through your door and who is exhibiting an extraordinary amount of trust by just literally walking in the door.
Yes.
And the thing of it is, and I don't know the exact numbers, but in the most recent U.S. trans survey, one of the things that people avoid the most is walking into healthcare providers because they are so afraid of being discriminated against. And like, when you go out of your way to use someone's old name, or you go out of your way to use someone's wrong pronouns, even though you've been corrected, that is abuse. I don't know about anybody else, but as a social worker working in the social work field, I want everybody to know that they can walk in my door, and that as long as they don't treat me like crap, that they're going to get really excellent service. When I do trainings, I talk about a situation when I was working at the counseling center at MSU, and someone walked in with a tattoo that was very much not in line with what I believe, and that clearly looked similar to people who had really harmed me when I was younger. And I remember in that moment having to make a choice of, I could be rude to this person, or I could literally just listen. This person was coming in for a crisis appointment. Can you imagine how brave that person had to be to walk through the door when you think about men in mental health? Like,
Yeah.
I could have really made a bad impression on that person, you know, but at the end of the day, I listened to that person. I let him tell me exactly what he needed to in that moment to get through what he was going through. I did notice his tattoo the whole time because it was very prominently displayed. But I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to treat this client like any other client. And I'm going to be aware and ready if something should happen. But you know what? It didn't. Mm-hmm. And then that person was staffed with another more appropriate counselor. And that person kept coming back to get those mental health services.
Right.
What if I had been
that bridge, right?
What if I had been horrible to that person? They would have maybe overgeneralized and thought,
I'm never going to do this again.
Mental health person again.
Any mental health,
Yeah.
right?
And I want to highlight that the situation that Amelia is laying out, the opposite of it happens every single day in this community and across the country, where a queer person is not provided with client-centered care because of the service provider's personal beliefs and personal values and personal opinions. We're acknowledging that we have to be able to provide service through our organization for all of the folks that we serve, regardless of if they agree. Like, if there are transphobic people within the gay community, we will still provide services to those people as long as they don't bring that transphobia into the space and make it unsafe for our other client populations. There are just so many organizations in this community that do not adopt that we're here to serve everyone. Even if they say they're here to serve all people, we'll have we've painted a really wonderful, because it is a really great picture of this amazing network of resources in the community that is affirming. And then there are those exceptions that will just straight up tell us to our face that they don't work with trans people or they don't have any queer clients, which we know that latter is just not true. It's just not the case.
Based on statistics, that's not true.
Your clients just don't feel comfortable disclosing that to you, or they're disclosing it and you're ignoring them.
Right. Thank you for the education. Thank you for the conversation. I will spend a lot of time, I think, just chewing over everything that we talked about. I want to what can you leave us with in terms of how can we get involved? Pride is coming up. Is there a date? When do we show up?
Absolutely. So Ozarks Pride Fest is June 13th in downtown Springfield on the square. It kicks off, the parade is going to kick off from the municipal courthouse on Chestnut Expressway at noon. If you're wanting to walk in the parade, we do still have sign up available for walking in the parade. No more floats. If you would like to volunteer, you can go to ozarkspridefest.com and sign up to volunteer. But the best way, if you're looking to get connected, looking to get involved, is just come to Pride Fest. Come to Pride. There's going to be more than 100 different vendors. Whether or not you're volunteering with the Glo Center or getting involved with the Glo Center specifically, there's several other queer organizations and nonprofits, and then a ton of organizations, resources, services, businesses, nonprofits, and community organizations that are allies, they're very amazing and great partners in our community. So serving the queer community and getting involved in these issues doesn't necessarily mean getting involved in like a Pride Fest or in getting involved in a Glo Center. It's making sure that the spaces that you have access to are affirming for all people.
Awesome.
I love that so much. And I'll just say, Harmony House, we're going to have a booth there. I think this is our third year to table there. It is my favorite community event. Here in Springfield, because it feels safe. It is diverse. As a Black woman, it's like, whew, I can just be.
Yeah.
It's just so fun. Before we go, though, I do want to give you a chance to speak to those folks. I mean, most of the folks listening are here in Greene County, Southwest Missouri, but for those folks listening who are in communities that don't have a Glo Center, or who are living in homes where the folks there are not affirming, what can those folks do? What would you say to those folks who might be listening?
Yeah. The age of the internet is both a blessing and a curse, but in this case, there are online support groups. There are online communities that are safe. I will answer anyone's call, no matter where it's from. And I do a lot of research for folks who are looking for affirming opportunities in other states. With some of the work that I do with IDs, like I can now navigate some of the government stuff that you do in other states as well. And I would say we are lucky enough in the United States today to, in general, have some kind of queer affirming space, at least one or two in every state. And so sometimes they're hard to find. Sometimes they're not super open, depending on the level of safety that they feel. But just reach out, like, I'm here. And like, as much as like, I can't practice social work outside of the state of Missouri because I'm not licensed, I can send an email that just says, hey, this is where you can get the services that you're looking for.
And how do people find you?
They can find me through our resource navigation website at glocenter.org.
What's next for the Glo Center?
Yeah.
Like, you've been here for 30 years.
Yeah.
What are you dreaming up next?
So several things. So just in the short term, we have Pride coming up. We'll have Pride on C Street in the fall, and we're excited to continue growing those, moments in our community of great representation and great resource navigation for folks to get access and promotion of our allies and services and everything like that. We're as a part of that, we're in the process of relaunching Ozarks Inclusion Project, which you can access at ozarksinclusionproject.org, which is our business directory for queer affirming businesses, nonprofits, resources, public resources. So Harmony House will be getting an invitation to claim their listing here shortly. And so we're relaunching that. And then really from that point, we are taking some time right now to figure out what does our next wave of growth look like, because it's here. We have some opportunities and we have some resources that we're incredibly lucky to have, that we are looking to see how we can make the greatest impact. Because as much as I've been kind of saying, like, we are becoming a well-resourced organization, contextually, our budget's $370,000 a year. We're a very small organization. And so the new support that we do have coming in, it's taking a look at what can we do outside of Springfield. It's taking a look at more tangibly, we've been kind of acting as guides and assistants to the grassroots efforts happening all around Southwest and Central South Missouri. And now it's time to look at what else can we offer besides words. What resources can we connect people with? What resources can we just provide to folks? And then what does that look like to help those organizations, those grassroots efforts, those pride events, those social groups and youth groups and et cetera throughout Southwest Missouri connect to all of these affirming organizations that we've established partners with who serve these areas? Because it's not just Glo. There are nonprofits that we work really closely with that have offices in some of these towns and cities. So there are affirming resources and partnerships right in their own backyard. They just don't know that they're there.
Yeah.
So our next step is really to take that step outside of Springfield and see what that could look like. In Springfield, it's honestly figuring out what we're going to do with that empty lot and how we have vastly outgrown the capacity of our space on commercial. Our youth group is too large. It's split into 2 days as a result of how large it got, and then they're all just coming twice a week. I know.
It is the coolest space.
We should have seen that one coming. So it is trying to figure out, well, we have all this growth, and we do need to invest more of it here in Springfield to ensure that Glo's here for another 30 years.
Exciting things on the horizon.
So exciting.
Erin, Amelia, we are so grateful to be mushrooms in your system. You all put the fun in fungus. Is that the title of the episode?
That's good. That's good.
Thank you so much for being here. So excited to partner with you in Pride and beyond.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
All individuals have a right to a life free of abuse. If you or someone you know needs help, please call our 24-hour hotline, 417-864-SAFE, 417-864-7233, or chat 24/7 with an advocate on our website at myharmonyhouse.org. Visit our website or follow us on our socials to stay up on the latest news and events. This is Voices Against Violence. Thanks for listening.